Can I have a motion to start the meeting? Chris, second Mary. Thank you. So first on the agenda, if everybody would just take a minute or two to look over the minutes from June 21st, and let me know what you think so we can approve the minutes. And can I have a motion when you're done looking at the minutes to approve them? Mary? In a second. Shaka, are you giving the second? Thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, all in favor? I'll abstain. Thank you. So the minutes passed. Let me just get onto the agenda, but just really quick, is that Shaka? Do you have a question, or were you just seconding the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm like looking at my chat, looking at the windows, looking at the agenda. Okay, so first on the agenda tonight, we have the subcommittee selection, and I'll turn this over to, I think, Dr. Wiles, right? Do you have the results? Okay, thank you.
Yep, I do. So thank you, everybody, for responding to Deb's Google form inquiries and everything. So here are the subcommittee members for each. The first in my stack is community engagement. And we have Gwen Pope, Mary Schmitz, Beth Martinez, and Chris Jager. So the four of you will be the core of our community engagement. There are others who served who are outside of the committee. So we can work with the four of you to connect all of you with those individuals, and hopefully you can, and this will be true for all the committees, make sure you meet before DEI, the big committee, meets again. So that's community engagement. Next up is student voice. This was popular. We have 7 individuals on this one, beginning with Noah Kaufman, Kylie Killens, Shreya Madagavangil Sajan. How'd I do, Shreya? I practiced. I got to get better.
It was okay. It was pretty good.
I'll get better. Varshini City, Julianne Scanlon, Blanca Gonzalez Parker, and Katie DePiro. Everybody got that? The research committee is Shaka Bedgood, Nina Kaplan, Suzanne Koala, Tyann Thomas, Tamika Collado Robinson, Carla Young, and that's it. And last but not least is communications. Emma Drellinger, Rachel Otter, Seema Rivera, Mike Laster, and Kelly Person. So pretty soon we're going to be introducing our new DEI leaders. So Derek, I'll work with you to help get these committees up and running with the core group and then the additional community members who have served as sort of ad hoc members to all of the subcommittees.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure. Questions, thoughts? Everybody good with their assignment? Okay, Seema, I think we can roll to the next item.
Sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Wiles. Next, we have DEI in action. And so tonight we have, well, I'll turn it over to Dr. Wiles to introduce our 2 new employees of the district. And
Thanks so much, Seema. So I am so pleased to have the opportunity tonight as we kick off our first official DEI meeting of the school year to introduce our brand new Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, who's been on the job a week and 3 days, and that is Mr. Derek Westbrook. And I've asked him to, introduce yourself to the committee and by extension to our community. Give us a little bit of sense of your professional journey and then why it was you wanted to land here in Guilderland as our Director of DEI.
Well, it all started a long time ago in upstate New York. I'm a resident of originally from Utica, New York, Utica Rome area, in a small town called Floyd, which probably very few people have ever heard of. But it was a very rural environment. My first, I guess, exposure to true diversity was going to a Cornell summer college. It was there that I got to meet people from 48 different countries and 48 different states. And for me, that from a kid from that small town, that was like total global immersion. And it really changed the direction of my life and the way I thought about my academic career and where I was going. Over the years, I was a major in Afro-American studies and cultural studies. And I did that for my master's degree as well and ended up teaching Africana studies for over 20 years and in higher ed, as well as being director of the Academic Support Center and working with opportunity programs in New York State. So that, led me into issues of diversity, issues of equity, issues of inclusion in higher education. Over the years, I've made my way through different parts of the educational system, from non-traditional routes to K through 12 and even charter schools. So in the last few years, I guess due to COVID more than anything else, I ended up looking into consulting again, and I was consulting on DEI virtually, which was great for me, but I got to, experience different districts in Los Angeles and Michigan and Massachusetts and, a lot of different places. And it lit a fire under me to want to get into that work full time. So that's what brought me to Guilderland. And when I was looking for a full-time position, Guilderland's infrastructure was something that drew me to the position. You have a very robust DEI committee. And in the district, there's so many individual committees doing so much work that I said, this is a place where DEI directors aren't alone, left to do this work, but it's by committee and there's a lot of folks involved in it. So this would be a good place for me to start. So I'm glad to be here and glad to be participating and getting to know everyone. I am getting immersed in the Guilderland community, and I hope to continue that journey until I'm cross over and you see me as just every day one of the people part of this community who's really immersed in it in himself.
Thanks, Derek. Anyone have any questions for Derek? Not interview questions. We've already put him through like 5 rounds, so. All right, well, welcome, Derek. I know in very short order, we'll have you figuring out where all 7 of our buildings are and how to get around them, how not to get lost in Farnsworth Middle School. That might take a little bit longer than some of the others, but I just want to underscore that we are a team here and we will be working with you to do this important work. So congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. And thank you everyone on chat who reached out.
So I don't see Leah Werther on the call yet. Leah is our teacher on special assignment for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she's going to be working closely with Derek. When she jumps on, maybe we can give her a chance to introduce herself as well. I just don't see her on the call quite yet. So Seema, I'm going to turn it back to you briefly.
Sounds good. Great. So if Leah jumps on and we can just pause and have her introduce herself. So next on the agenda, then moving right along, we have equity team updates. I'll turn this over to Mike Laster.
Thanks, Dr. Rivera. Appreciate that. So each building over the summer had the opportunity to pull together their equity teams and continue our work that began last year with Progression Partners. Progressive Partners, excuse me. So basically, I'll give an update by building. Each principal was able to share some highlights of some of the work that happened over the summer. Really, all of that work in all of the buildings centered on our equity plans. As everybody knows, the equity plans were all created by each building's equity team. We have some short-term, some mid-term, and some long-term goals. So we brought together those teams to really look at our short-term goals for the 23-24 school year. So at the high school, the faculty this year will be involved in equity walks, which is an activity that Progressive Partners shared with us as a way to have different teachers observe each other in different situations. So they formed mixed department groups. Those department groups will be working together all year long. They have a specific training about the equity walk rubric that they'll be using. And they're going to begin those after the October faculty meeting, which is going to be pretty exciting to monitor for them, which is good. Last year, they did do a number of student forums, and this year they're going to continue those, looking to make sure that student voice is involved in this conversation at the high school. They already incorporated some hate speech and sexual harassment assembly content as part of their opening class assemblies. In fact, I believe Mr. Westbrook and Ms. Werther were involved in part of that. They're going back to the theme of We Are Guilderland, which they'll be using throughout the year to sort of engage students in school spirit, improve the aesthetics of the building, and also work on more accessible signage in the building, which you'll see is a theme that is coming through all of our schools. At FMS, my equity team came together for 2 days over the summer, and we basically made a roadmap of all the activities and all the different learning experiences that we had as a team last year during our equity training that we want to recreate with the entire building. We're going to do that in 2 ways. We're going to do it in a choice-based and then in an all-staff. So one time a month, they're going to get an experience during a staff meeting. And then another time of the month, they're going to have an opportunity to select some PD sessions that align with our DEI work. We're also working with the high school and our buildings and grounds folks to create accessible signage. We made some picture-based signage with our speech pathologist, so our non-English speakers and our non-proficient readers can still access building spaces. We're doing some training for staff to teach kids how to use the Google Translate app, so that as we put posters up in the building, students and teachers can make sure that everybody can understand what's trying to be communicated. And then we also created a new welcome packet for our new families, with some specific questions centered around our DEI action plan. Going down to the elementary level, at Altamont, over the summer, their equity team created a parent survey and a self-reflection tool for the staff to use in their classrooms to sort of gauge where they are on the continuum of DEI in the classroom. They're going to use that information to plan for the activities later on in the school year. They have planned out some faculty meeting equity team presentations through January, and they're also focused on building visibility and beautifying the entrance of the building as people come in. So that'll be fun to watch Altamont get their work. Over at Linwood, our colleague Jackie, they and their equity team met over 2 days. They set up monthly equity team meetings to have check-ins and plan for future activities and learning engagements. They already planned out their staff meetings through November, and they already have some ideas for December. Most of their opening day staff meeting was about where they are in this conversation and in this work. They already did some of the activities that we did last year with Progression Partners. They're focusing October and November on the topic of implicit bias. And they also started a staff book group, and they're going to read the text Blind Spot, which is a great text if you haven't read that. Pine Bush equity team again met 2 days over the summer. They identified and designated gender neutral bathrooms with our facilities director, Mr. Cliff Nooney. They created some talking points for teachers to use in the classroom to sort of instruct students on what they are and how they can be used. They're also talking about signage that reflects the languages that are spoken in the building. And then one of their main focuses is a review of the attendance data and really trying to get at that problem of chronic absenteeism with some of our student body. So that was the Pine Bush equity team work over the summer. Guilderland, they met multiple times over this past summer. They planned most of the staff meetings of the year already. They're looking at identifying some activities and learning experiences that we as equity teams had last year to basically recreate with the rest of the faculty. They're also starting a book group. They chose Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, Zaretta Hammond text. And then they created a subcommittee to look at the beautification of the building. They actually repainted the entranceway and the lobby over the summer. And they added some welcome signs in multiple languages. So off and running on some of their short-term goals. And then last but not least, our colleagues at Westmere, they met several times in July. They had some follow-up work in August. They also updated their front lobby to include a large world map with over 40 languages that are spoken by the Westmere Elementary students, and also all the countries that are represented where they're from. They also developed consistent and positive behavior expectations for students, including hallway behavior, voice levels, and instructional spaces. They're teaching by focusing on the why behind this behavioral need. Technology support is being provided for parents. In addition to Parent Square, they're also helping parents access School Cafe and eSchool data. So they're also joining Guilderland to look at their focus on student attendance and chronic absenteeism. So busy summer for all 7 schools. Many of our equity team members were able to come on in and help do the work. So I'd like to thank all of those teachers and members of the 7 school buildings equity teams who gave up, some summertime to come in and do this work, which shows their commitment. It shows their desire to make sure that the action plan that we developed last year will actually come to fruition. So I'd also like to thank my colleague principals for helping me provide the update tonight. Thank you. If there's any questions, let me know. Beth.
Sorry, trying to unmute myself. Thank you so much for that update. That's really wonderful to hear everything that's happening within the district. I was wondering, so it seems like the elementary schools tend to be operating in silos in terms of like they're each doing their own equity team. And a lot of the ideas that you mentioned at the various buildings seem really wonderful, but it would be great to be looking at the whole picture in terms of equity across all of the elementary schools together. Like as a parent at Westmere, I would love to see like that idea from the first elementary school of a survey and figuring out like where parents are at in the process. So like it would be wonderful to see like this equity practice across the district as a whole, like combine those thoughts so that it's not like each school is doing their own thing, but really all of the schools are coming together and thinking about equity at the elementary level as a whole so that there is equity across the district and the ways that they're engaging in that. Because there's wonderful ideas at every building, and it would be great for other schools to know what each one is doing.
Beth, I'll jump in here to say that's 100% where we want to go with all of this. So the variation that you see in the activities that the elementaries are doing right now are based on their needs analysis that they did independently. So they're all kind of in different places. But now that we're fully staffed up with DEI, with Derek and Leah, we're going to be looking across the board and doing some threading through so we do have consistency across the buildings. Like that survey idea is something that we're really looking to do district-wide. So stay tuned, but great point.
Well, and Beth, I would comment that as the principals engage in this work, we steal ideas from each other, right? So that parent survey is a perfect example. When Peter, Mr. Brabant, sort of shared the work that they were thinking about, all the principals were like, "Hey, can you get us the draft of that survey so we could take it to our equity teams and check it out?" The same thing happened with the rubric at the high school. So the walkthrough activities that they're going to do and the rubric training that they're going to do with the high school. All the principals were like, "Hey, Mike, Mr. Piscatelli, can you share that stuff with us so that we can figure out how we can bring it to our equity team or bring it to our school community at the right time in the right context?" Because I will say all of the 7 buildings are at different places along the continuum. So that's something that I think as building leaders, we need to think about as we enact change initiatives, or think about increasing, personal learning for our staff members in this area, because all of the 7 buildings are in different places. But to Dr. Wild's point, I mean, the ultimate goal is to get us all at the same place.
Other questions for Mr. Laster? Oh, okay, thank you, Mike. I know there's a lot to do all 7 buildings, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And if I saw correctly, I think I saw Leah join at some point, not to surprise her, but maybe she can just compose herself for a minute and introduce herself. Leah, I don't know if you can hear me. I've not met you before, so welcome.
Yes, thank you. Hello. I apologize for my tardiness. I have a sick kid and a spouse who's not home yet. So, so my apologies. Yes, my name is Leah Werther. I'm very excited to be joining the Guilderland team. And I've been fortunate enough to have walked through all of the buildings so far, and have also joined one of the DEI committees in one of the elementary schools. Derek and I went to one on this past Monday, and so everyone's been really welcoming, and so I'm really excited to work with all of you with all of your DEI initiatives. So thank you.
Leah, do you want to share a little bit of your journey, like how it is that it came to be that you do this work?
Oh, sure. Yes, so I have been in education. This is my 18th year in education. I started teaching at Niskuna Central School District as an English teacher. Thought I was going to be an elementary teacher, so I actually have my degree in elementary education and literacy. Somehow ended up in the high school with another, certificate to teach English, and I did that for about 16 years. And last year, I was called to become the DEI high school coach. And within that work, thank you so much for the welcome. I was able to bring in a lot of different luminaries, artists, and also writers in residence to classroom spaces, bringing in, and I really love welcoming the community into spaces of the classroom. I think that there's such a wealth of, individuals who can, really help to engage our student population. And so that's sort of a thing that I really enjoy, making connections with people. Last week, I was actually invited to a high school class. There's a new picture book, and let's see, it's Picture Book Art, Impact, and Education that Alicia Wine and Bernie Bott have put together, and they asked me to be their first secret reader for picture book. So I actually went to Westmere Elementary and perused through some of the stacks and grabbed a book drawn together. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the author Min Lay, and his book is also, the illustrator of the book is Dan Sanat, who's a Caldecott award winner. And so Min is actually, I'm part of the National Councils of Teachers of English Asian American Caucus, and he is also a member. So I just told him, hey, guess what? I'm sharing your book to high school students, because picture books, there's no, it's from, as he said, it's from birth to death. Picture books are for everyone. And he's like, oh, that's great. And I was like, well, and by the way, if you're free, if you want to just kind of join us. And he's like, let me look at my schedule. And he popped in as a secret virtual guest for students, and they were able to say hi to him. He was able to tell a little bit about his journey. Drawn Together is this book about a grandfather and grandson who have this language barrier, and they're unable to really connect. And you see that in these really beautiful images, but how do they connect is through drawing. And so they're drawn together. And I just, it's really great. And I shared my own story of not being able to communicate sometimes with my grandmother, who, spoke Filipino, Tagalog, Bicol, and I did not. And so, we were able to tell our own, stories to students, and it was really wonderful to have those students listen to it and ask, that author some real questions. And so, yeah, he just kind of took some time out of his day. And I really love seeing those connections. So yeah, and then Matt Pinchnet and we actually worked together the Capital District Writing Project. So I'm one of the co-directors of the writing project. He and I did a Freedom Dreaming for Educational Justice project together 2 years ago, where we had students think about their own identities and create some art pieces in just K-12 classes. And we also worked with the Tui Fellows at SUNY Albany and had different teaching artists come in. And then we held an art exhibit at SUNY Albany, which actually then was picked up by Teachers College at Columbia University. So the artwork from K-12 students in the Capital Region was then showcased, down in Columbia, which is really great. And actually, we're working together now to create, to publish some books. So we're trying to publish a picture book of student artwork. And also we're working on like a teacher's guide as well. So we have, some pieces that we're putting in. So those are some things that are kind of in the works. And so when Matt told me about this position, after I told him about my coaching that I've been doing, he said, you know what, you should apply for this because it's K-12 and not just high school. And I thought, you know what, I think this would be really wonderful to be able to expand that from not just, because DEI is not, and I think sometimes people are like, we got to like focus on middle school and high school, but like, let's also elementaries too, So yes, I'm just really excited for the year, and it's been really wonderful so far. So thank you. Sorry if I took up too much time.
That was great. Thank you, Leah. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Wells.
No, I was just going to say thanks, Leah. We appreciate you having you here, and looking forward to the dynamic duo leading us forward.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on right to the learning component. And I think, Chris, if you're still on, were you planning to take over this part? I know that you had open house at FMS, but looks like you guys finished.
No, it looks like COVID kept me from going.
Oh,
so you get all of me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that part.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, so I shared a ridiculous pile of resources. So I was looking for one or two engaging bits about the inequities or the need for more in mental health. This is Suicide Prevention Month in September. So if you're not aware of that, I will at some point here plug that there is a suicide prevention walk coming up in Schenectady, but I provided a lot of options to read about, and I tried to make them a little bit varied. And then there was also one video clip, if you were lucky enough to find that. It was comical. And I just have some more kind of open discussion questions if you wanted to take a look at those. So I'm trying to pull it up on my phone. I had it up.
Maybe while you do that, Chris, we can have this kind of in like a two-part discussion. The first part being that so in the past 2 years or 3 years, 2 years, I don't know, of this committee, we've read a book throughout the whole academic year. And so we've kind of come to these meetings reading a chapter or two of the book and then having a discussion around those chapters, which was great. And so when the steering committee met last week, we talked about, instead of committing to one book for the year, thinking instead about having some shorter readings, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a reading, it could be a podcast or a video, and then changing it up that way. We're not, committed to, just to switch it up since we've been doing that. And so first, I guess to open up that discussion and to see what you all think, because it's committees for all of you, all of us, the district. So any thoughts about that? Suzanne? I think you're muted.
Sorry. Oh my goodness, I should know that by now. I think that's a great idea. There is a vein in sociology called public sociology, right? And so there are some pieces that are some academic pieces. Can you hear me? Yep, that are not, not so academic-y. And I certainly would be happy to, scare up an article or two that fall in that lane of public sociology. Also, smaller pieces allow us to go with more like of a breadth of issues, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. And that would be a great idea. I think that was one of the ideas that we talked about, was to get feedback or resources from people on the committee, because I'm sure everybody, obviously, who has joined this committee has a lot to share. So we can figure out a way to collect that. Also, it seems kind of timely. Sometimes things come up during the school year, and it seems, let's take advantage of whatever happened. So read something about what's timely and what's going on. But certainly not opposed to other ideas or other books in the future. Anybody else have anything to add? You can still add if you want to. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Is the steering committee gonna pick the articles, or if somebody comes across something that they think is worthy of, is there some type of, how are we gonna handle that? The selection of those things, whether it be a TED Talk, an article.
Did you want to answer that, Chris, or do you want me to?
I mean, we had talked about having kind of, asking for any input that we could include and then select from. Also, if the research committee, I think we had tossed that idea out a little bit as well, give them something to work on. Maybe creating a calendar of topics for the different months and then going from there.
Yeah, I was thinking a shared doc that, people, saw a TED Talk, saw a good article, saw something, they could throw it on there, and then the steering committee could, determine whether or not they want to push it out to the rest of the group. I mean, I don't know. Just an idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We can get that going after this. Right, Dr. Wells? I think Mary and then Beth.
I really just kind of want to piggyback on what you were saying. I think it is a great idea, instead of doing the book, to do the different articles, because then we can react according to what's going on in the school and things that happen. But also, as we get into the fireside chats and we hear from community members, areas of concern, we can address that at the same time. So I really like the idea of doing the different articles.
That's a great point, Mary. Thank you for reminding me about that too, the fireside chats. And Beth?
Yeah, I had a question. Have you as a committee ever had like a shared email chain that you can communicate with one another on the committee? I asked because, like, for example, in my profession, like, we have different webinars and resources that are offered for free. Like, we have one coming up on book bans and the impact on public education, and it's featuring a teacher, a librarian, a student. That's happening October 3rd. So I could share that with the team, and you could push it out to whoever may want to attend it. But, like, is there a way for me to share resources with this group?
So that's actually a really good question. So this came up, I think last year, or the year before. There was, a couple people wanted to, have, longer discussions or have further discussions based on what we talked about. And then email seemed like probably not the best way to do it, but we were thinking about what would be the best way, because clearly we're all here for the same reason. And so I think people would want to know about that. I don't want to step on toes. I don't know if Derek and Leah want to come up with a way together to manage that. And I don't remember, Dr. Wiles, I feel like it was a while ago if we came up with a solution to that.
Not formally. I mean, we do have, like, everyone on this call is part of a group email that Mrs. Sim manages to get, the agendas out and the links and to communicate. But again, I'm not sure email is the best vehicle for doing what you've just described. So maybe we put our heads together to think about what platform that might work. But that's a great idea, so that if people do want to engage in between meetings to talk about something they've read or watched or attended, that's terrific.
Didn't we talk about maybe like a shared folder last year in one of the communications meetings where, like, at least this group could share resources and stuff? So, because the only reason why I'm saying that is because then the principals could grab, resources and articles and things to use with their faculty and staff. Very similar, Chris, to the document that you shared with us. I mean, with all those links. Like, if the principals had that doc, I mean, they could use that as a way to access resources. I don't know. I think we could do a shared folder pretty easily. In terms of continuing the dialogue, I'm going to defer that. I agree with you, Seema, in terms of, I don't know what that looks like, whether it's a forum. I know Leah and Derek have some ideas about some affinity group stuff. So I'm gonna let Leah jump in.
Yeah, thank you. I just actually put on the chat because I felt like I saw someone else's hand up, so I didn't want to go and take someone else's time. But maybe a Google Classroom where there are, because on Google Classrooms you can put different topics and materials there, and there's even, I feel like if there's things that are due. I mean, I don't know if it can get connected to a calendar, because Beth, what you mentioned, is it through ADL? Because I actually signed up for that too. And I think, like, sometimes it's just word of mouth, people talking to each other and saying, like, hey, there's a thing, but not everyone gets to know about it. So, like, yesterday, I actually, and I told some other teachers that I know from the Global Majority about NYSET has a new group that is the members of color affinity and action group, and I've been telling everyone about it. I'm like, okay, I really love this, because we had affinity spaces for teachers of the Global Majority, and also LGBTQIA plus teachers at the district I came from. And I just really felt like that was a really wonderful space for educators who may, have some things that they might want to share, but looking around, like, I don't know, they might not have, they have some commonalities with others, but maybe not someone else who, so they might need, like, a space like that. And so then when I heard about this, I again told everyone, and then last minute I realized I couldn't find the Zoom link, and I didn't sign up. But then I called NYSET and I said, hey, by the way, I'm the DI TOSA at Gilderland. Can I get in? And I got in, and Cheryl Lee Ralph from Abbott Elementary was actually the keynote speaker. And so it was just really wonderful. But those are the things that, like, those things like that people can be a part of, but we need to be able to access them, right? So I don't know if Google Classroom is the right avenue for it, if there's other places. So, open to suggestions and ideas. Thank you. And I think, Chris, did you have your hand up? I feel like earlier. I'm sorry. I thought I saw something, but okay. Thank you.
But yeah, thanks, Leah, and I appreciate Mike. Yes, you're right. We did have a shared folder that we were putting resources in, and so maybe that's where. And again, maybe I'll let Leah and Derek and figure this out about where you can have shared resources and then kind of like prolonged discussion, which are two different things. Go ahead, Derek.
I think you're going where I was thinking. So basically, we want to be able to curate an experience so people don't have information overload, and there's no way to really go through the amount of information that's coming in. So I'm looking forward to getting over to the schools and meeting everyone and finding out what people are doing, because there's already a wealth of information available through the equity plans that are there and the resources that people are using already, that we need to begin to curate those and to create multiple platforms where people can access that at their leisure and at their level of discourse, like where they want to really insert themselves into that conversation, but be able to manage it so that people can progressively make a journey instead of just spinning their wheels. So that those are going to be some great discussions coming up. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. And I know Lee and I have been putting our heads together about a couple of different things. So this is the direction we're moving. So I'm glad everybody's already thinking along those lines.
That's great. Thank you, Leah and Derek. It sounds like, and I thank you, Beth, for bringing this up, because this is probably something important to talk about at the beginning of the school year. So I guess for now, maybe if you want to email either myself or Derek, who are on the steering committee, or to Leah, and then we could go from there and maybe share more of how that's going to look next time. Thank you both for thinking about this. Sorry to put you on the spot. I know that we just started. Any other thoughts about readings, or I guess kind of management of what we're going to be doing going forward, at least for this year? And kind of like Beth said, if there's a really great book that you want to share, like, feel free to share it still. Just because we're not reading it on the committee as a group, that doesn't mean that maybe a subcommittee or maybe just a group of people want to read it together. I think that's a great idea. Suzanne?
I was just thinking how I organize like my literature for work is like just maybe making topics. Like the information overload is definitely not a good thing, but like maybe if there is like a dump, that we could have some people who are I don't know, who would want to like categorize it that way. It'd be a bit easy to kind of scan through, like, what are the topics of DEI? Like, what does DEI mean? On what a few people have mentioned how the elementary schools, like integrating them and finding some way to like make it like K-12, right? The DEI program K-12. Something that I hear a lot from the elementary school parents is like, just what, like, what is the definition of DEI? What does it really mean? And I think sometimes when people don't feel like they can grip onto something, they might shy away from participating or being engaging in it. So like, even for us as a group, right, to have a list of topics of like, what does DEI mean, right? What does it include? What does it not include?
It's a great point. Thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, I mean, information overload, right, is not great. Like having 75 tabs open like I do with, oh yeah, I'll get to reading this at some point, is probably not a good idea. Chris, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I would also say, like, unlike what I did, actually having a summary of each article, or if you're providing a resource, giving just like a 2-sentence, what the heck is this resource about, would be really helpful. I didn't do that for anybody here because I wanted you to actually read something. So hopefully you did.
No, thanks, Chris, for taking the lead on that because we started right away, so there wasn't too much time, and I appreciate you finding articles that were not, super long, so everybody had time to read them, at least one of them in the week. Other ideas about this? Just the management piece. Otherwise, I'll turn it really over to Chris, who helped, thank you, select this topic for September. And I think it is because, like you said, right, September is Suicide Awareness Month.
It is. And also, I have my ulterior motive as a school counselor that I'm always thinking around the topic of mental health. So please don't make me the only person talking, because that's not fun. And I'm not a classroom teacher. If we were in a room together, I'd move around and make everybody move and get involved. So be glad that we're not in a room together. So my first question is, in whatever article you read, or if it was the one video that I found, and I looked for TED Talks, but they were all really long. What's something you learned or something that surprised you? Is there anybody who wants to jump on that question? Or do you want me to go first? Yes, I will. All right. Going first. Oh, Mary, you raised your hand.
I wanted to save you, Chris. That's okay. There were a couple of things. There was the one article I had read where Drake had made a comment about another artist and needing, talking about his mental health care. And I was kind of surprised by that. Maybe not because I know Drake personally, but I always thought, communities like artists were perhaps more supportive of each other. But to come out publicly, I was just very disappointed in that. And another one where someone was seeking mental health and talking about getting some therapy, and they said, well, Rosa Parks didn't need therapy. Well, maybe Rosa Parks did need therapy, but in her day and age, it wasn't the thing to do or to be able to get it. That kind of thinking. And then the last one that I had read, and it's talking about classic old school framing, such as I'm a person with depression or I'm bipolar, and went on to talk about how we all seem to vacillate at some point in our lives through different kinds of struggles. And I think that is so true. So I really, that's what I liked about the different articles and being able to look at them and pick out something from each of them.
Thank you, Mary. That is interesting, the bit about Drake, because then you think about Lizzo, who also made a statement that was regrettable and then went and publicly apologized and changed the lyrics of her song because she didn't know. And a lot of times that's the thing with microaggressions, which is a topic we kind of wanted to weave through a lot of this, is that sometimes you might not knowingly microaggress, but when you find out, when you realize that you've done something like that, what do you do? What's your follow through? Is it to double down like Drake, or is it to apologize and make a positive statement? Beth?
Yeah, so I looked at the article that was looking at suicide rates based on various groups, and I found that article to be really interesting. If someone had asked me what group I thought was the highest, I would not have thought it was white individuals. But as it broke down and talked through what things kind of keep people connected to their community so that suicide rates are not as high, whether it was religion or feeling responsible for taking care of your children or, being responsible for caring for your loved ones who are older, it made a lot of sense in terms of cultural groups and norms. But it was really interesting to look at it from that perspective and that lens of like, why are certain rates higher than others? And then it kind of connected to the piece that Mary mentioned too about the microaggressions piece, which was mentioning about, Rosa Parks didn't need therapy. And I think that again goes back to sort of a lot of cultural norms too, where, seeking therapy and seeking help is seen as bad, is seen as something that like it's not acceptable in one's culture. That's a personal thing that you keep to yourself. You don't talk to a stranger about it. And so I think like this idea and concept of, different cultures that people come from and how that influences whether they seek help for mental health problems or not. And then how that trickles down into different generations as well. So kind of that perspective of looking at it from different cultural group is really interesting.
Thanks, Beth. Mr. Laster.
I like the mental health, mental illness and microaggression article that was shared. That was interesting to me because that was a different take on this conversation that I've had. I am, the definition in terms of, the perceived by a member of an oppressed group as possibly, but not certainly instantaneous oppression. I thought that resonated with me. I thought that was interesting from a mental illness lens. So I don't know. I thought that I appreciated that article because it was something that I had not thought of in this conversation. So thank you.
Tamika.
Hi. So I read the article, The Art of Education, really resonated with me. I guess as from an education standpoint, not realizing that your surroundings or your environment could be, could trigger forms of microaggression, right? If you don't have inclusive language or a curriculum or images in the classroom, ensuring that everyone feels a part of that classroom, right? And so making sure that the imagery is correct on the wall and it's inclusive, making sure that you're using inclusive language, making sure that you are aware of and addressing those statements that could be considered implicit bias, when you hear students, commenting on, making comments, and making sure that you're not doing it yourself. And so I thought that was a really interesting article. It really resonated with me. I can, with raising 3 kids in the school district, I hear stories all the time. And I'm just like, everything that was in that article. And it also gave some great feedback on some like tips and tricks on what you can do to build a more inclusive classroom, things that you should do, looking out for what's missing, or who's missing, and how can you help individuals feel more included in the conversation or the education, et cetera. So.
Thank you, Tamika. Leah.
Yeah, Tamika, I read that article as well, and part of it that resonated with me is the part where they talked about provide a culturally responsive curriculum and how honoring and acknowledging the identities of your students is a year-long responsibility, not only observed for identified months. So I think it's really important that students don't see that, I'm only important for one part of the year. You're important all year long, and all the things that are here, any books that we might highlight, it's still accessible anytime. We're not taking them away. They're always here. So I think that part really stuck with me.
I'm glad people liked that article. I kind of threw it in as like a zinger from a very different direction because so many of them were statistics heavy. And I liked that was an actual teacher in the profession reflecting on what she could do as an educator to make education more inclusive. And I think there's, that was an art classroom, but 100% could be rolled into any kind of classroom. Anyone else have anything that kind of just stuck out at them? I would piggyback on Mike at the microaggressions and mental health, just something, I work in mental health and that's where I come from in my strengths. But until I worked in middle school, I never heard so many mental health microaggressions that are just slung around because they're funny and they're on TikTok and it's funny to call things crazy and it's considered humorous to say kill yourself and things like that, which aren't funny. They're never funny. Nothing about them is funny. And I think it's really hard to push back to be part of a counterculture against something that's become so commonplace. Marie, I saw you up, and then Shaka.
Actually, I am going to report out for Varsini, who couldn't be here tonight, but she sent me a couple paragraphs reflecting on some of the articles, and the 2 she wrote about were the microaggression ones. So she wrote a lot, so I'll kind of paraphrase, but it really echoes from a student's perspective just how damaging being the recipient of microaggressions can be. And she talks about how people with marginalized identities shouldn't have to feel like they have to be the bigger person to try to fight them. And that really understanding that microaggressions do have a profound impact on the mental health of students is something that we all need to be paying attention to. And then she talked about coming together as a community to kind of break the cycle and not just thinking that students are being dramatic and they need to deal with it. And as a solution, she said, you know, clubs and co-curriculars are a great venue to talk and have other people who can be good listeners and, you know, provide a safe forum for them to work. So I just thought that was awesome. She's at another class right now, but she wanted to make sure we heard from her.
Thank you. Shaka, what did you want to contribute?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. My computer's been crazy all night, but I read a lot of the same articles as everyone else did, and one of the thoughts that just came to mind to me, and particularly this month as a whole as well, is the old African adage that if you don't embrace the child, they'll burn down the village to make you feel its warmth, right? So in one way or another, either internally or externally, they're going to let us know what they need, right? So it just makes me think of, you know, what we've been talking about tonight, making our schools more inclusive, making our communities more inclusive so that everybody feels welcomed, everybody feels like they belong, everybody feels like they have a voice, you know, and you know, when we can get to that point where we're shifting that narrative, maybe we won't be reading these articles about people that look like me and look like my kids that are dying and don't feel that they have a voice, you know. So that's what I was just thinking about this and this month, the whole mental health month, and you know.
Thank you. Yeah, Seema, and then Shreya.
I read the same article as Beth, the New York Times article about the suicide rates in the different groups. And I was also surprised when I read it. I didn't realize, and you know, it's not like something I study, and I thought, you know, I would know something about it, but I had no idea that it was that white people were in the majority in terms of suicide rates. I did not think that. And then I also didn't realize, and then maybe it's just because I haven't thought about it that much, how many different places it could intersect with. So obviously talked about religion, indigenous groups and colonization and Asian Americans and the collectivism that goes, you know, that's part of that community. And it just made me think, so, you know, I work in education too at the university. And so we have like a system, you know, if we're concerned about a student or something, that, you know, we basically, you know, work through the system to give support to that student. And so just no matter really who we are, right? Like I'm not a counselor like you, Chris, but we all work at some point with students. And so just to learn more, and this is kind of ongoing, to just continue to read and learn more about this, because as we work with, I don't know, students, and I'm sure, like Beth said, I was surprised to read it, so I'm sure other people were surprised to read that as well. So it's just an awareness piece that I thought was good. So thanks for picking that out, Chris.
Thanks. Shreya.
I wanted to like elaborate on like a point that Varshini made. So a line, like the article that I read was by Scientific American, and like the line that like resonated for like me from that article was that microaggressions are constant reminders to people of color that they are second-class citizens. And this was something that sort of stood out to me because you don't really realize the impact like such like a small comment could have on someone. And then, you know, like when you think about it, like someone who like hears such comments like every single day of their life, like the depression and the mental stress that they could go through, it's like so real. And this actually reminds me of like a story that happened the other day. I was talking to one of my friends about like how I heard someone on the bus being called a hybrid because the kid was like a part of like two different races, and he thought it was funny. So he told me how like he called one of his like white Asian friends a rice cracker. And then I was just like, I was sort of like shocked how he thought that was funny because it's really not. And then like he told me like how, you know, other person like laughed at it, you know, like how it was totally fine. It was just meant to be a joke. And that got me thinking like, did they laugh because they didn't want to hurt like his feelings, or like, because I'm sure that like no one would ever find that funny if they were being called a rice cracker because of their race. And it's really upsetting to me how like people they sort of categorize people by their race instead of like, you know, who they really are. So I think that's something like as a school, even though we had like that anti-hate rally a couple years ago about microaggressions, it's still like a problem at our school for sure. And I think it's kind of worse this year. But that's something I feel like a lot of people should know, is how to respond to like such comments, because it can be hard because you want to like say something because you know you don't want this to happen to you, but at the same time you don't want to hurt the person like who said it, because obviously they didn't say to like intentionally hurt you. And something else I wanted to bring about was something Mrs. Martinez said earlier about like the stigma behind mental health. And I actually like saw this in that video clip with Noah Trevor. He talked about like the stigma in Black communities about mental health, and I could relate to this like a lot because in like the Asian community, like a lot of parents see mental health as like something that's almost non-existent. Like people who like do have mental health needs, they're sort of like seen as not normal, which is kind of weird because you can't really define anyone as normal because you know we all have our own problems. So that's something I've seen a lot. And like parents, like when someone's having like a mental breakdown per se, like they usually like let's just say if you're a teen and if you're having a mental breakdown, they usually think it's because of your age, like you're emotional, you know. They don't really like see how you just want some space, you just need some time and like the help. But you know, like a lot of parents just like tell you to suck it up and deal with it, like this is life, which is kind of like hurtful, and I wish it were different, you know. But I feel like this is a problem that's sort of getting recognition, but like at the same time, you know, a lot of like it's something that needs to be worked on. But that was just something I had to say.
Thanks, Shreya. That was a lot, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Derek, you got your hand up.
Yes, wow. I was just, just reflecting on what the last commenter just said. I taught a class in Africana Studies called Psychology of the Black Experience. And that was what a time where I really got immersed in just how culture, psychology, and all of these things come together. And the articles about microaggressions always bring that out because the same parts of the brain that light up for pain light up when people are going through where people are listening to microaggressions. So that people are actually in physical pain while they're trying to perform, while they're trying to be in school, while they're trying to go across their regular routine. And that is something that we don't always take into account when we're looking at why someone's not productive and why someone's not necessarily engaged. And so it does have a lot of it comes across a lot. And when people internalize their oppression, they start to say those things that we say, wow, they're start making comments about being a wisecracker and those type of things. When we start to internalize those images, that's when we're going down a very interesting road that we know that we need some intervention, because there's definitely a lot going on in a person who's in a lot of pain and in a lot of confusion about their identity and who they are. These all connect to notions of institutionalized racism, which we don't always connect to microaggressions and implicit bias. The APA recently issued an apology for the role that psychology had played in in creating the problems that we're experiencing today when we're wondering why it's not that people don't want access to mental health, it's that the institutions that a lot of us look to say, hey, we have access to these institutions, they're like, no. I did a consulting job with Empire Insurance Company, and part of the things they were asking me is, why don't certain populations of color want to access the health field, or why aren't they getting these vaccinations, or why aren't they accessing mental health? And I said, well, let's think about how these groups came into contact with Western medicine and Western psychology. And when you look at those stories, you understand why people may be reticent to get institutional help, but look for help in other forms, whether it's through the church or through other communal or cultural needs. So sometimes what we're seeing is a combination of a lot of factors going on. And that's why I like how these articles start to open the door to a much broader and much wider and a much deeper conversation that we need to be having about these issues and seeing how that they connect. So thank you, Chris, for sharing.
Wow. Thanks, Derek. You got me thinking about a lot of things with that. Tamika, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a comment, based on the discussion. I think we do need to, this country has got to get better about checking the boxes, right? And so thinking of institutionalized racism, what is race, right? Race doesn't have any biological basis, right? We don't classify different color goldfish as black or white. They're just goldfish, right? And so people are people. And it's because we have all of these boxes to check the reason why there's racism and bias. I just came from a State of Black Health Equity conference in Puerto Rico 2 weeks ago. And one of the things that was highlighted was the fact that, they don't usually classify themselves by race, right? They're Puerto Ricans. There's no black or white. Do they have issues around race and, predominantly, or disparities amongst the predominantly Black Puerto Rican community? Absolutely. But it's a start, right? And so as long as we continue to check these boxes and enforce these boxes, on our applications or in our school districts, we're going to continue to see some of these issues because we classify each other differently based on the color of our skin. And that's a real issue. So, yeah. And I'm sorry you experienced that, Shreya. It's unfortunate that a lot of our children do.
Shreya, you gave me the thought that one of the things that I would love to see more work around, and like a concrete thing we could offer, is microaggressions, like explaining what they are, but also as somebody who's microaggressed, what do you do after that? Like actual training. Because I've had, experiences where people have called me out for something I've said that wasn't intentional. And then you get that defensive feeling and you want to be like, but I didn't mean, and then it's like, no, that's not the right response. It's I'm sorry. And here's how I'm going to make that better. And that takes a lot. And I think our natural human inclination is to defend. And that's not necessarily the best reaction in those situations. And I think a lot of people don't know how to respond. And so it just creates more of those walls instead of more connections. I do know we have one more topic to get to, and I'm watching the clock. So I see Aaliyah, and we're not going to get to any of the other questions because I think this discussion has been really, really rich. I really appreciate how much thought everyone has put into these articles. I probably could have given fewer, but I just got on a wild kick of enjoying reading them all. So I'm glad you enjoyed them too. Leah, do you want to round out our discussion?
Oh, I just wanted to say that to just put a resource out there that I could share. Last year, I went to a webinar by Elena Aguilera, who wrote, Coaching for Equity. And the webinar was what to say when you hear something racist. And so I took some notes on that. And those are some things, like some resources that I can share. So if we have some sort of Google Classroom or something like that, I think that's something helpful too, because those are the things that, what happens next, right? Like, what are those next steps when something harmful like that? And I'm so sorry, you experienced that, and that you mentioned that, that there's things going on right now, even with all the work of microaggressions that have happened, right?
Mm-hmm. Awesome. yes, put that in whatever this shared resource situation we are compiling, because I would like to see that very, very much. Do we have time? Who's Seema? You're in charge. Do we have time
Emma.
for these two, and then do the next thing and be happy with our
Yes.
meeting?
Yep.
All right. So Emma, and then Shaka.
So I read the microaggression article as well, mental illness and microaggression. And I just think one of the lines that I think would be really good to sum up this conversation would be one of the quotes from the article, which states, while stating that mental illness is quite common, seems to indicate acceptance, it can be experienced as minimizing one's distress. And I think that's really important as parents, as teachers, as educators, as just people in general, is that knowing that what we say can affect those who have mental illness and who struggle with mental illness. And it has a whole list of things that you probably shouldn't say to someone who struggles with mental illness. And those really stood out to me because I myself have experienced things with mental illness. And I think we don't want to treat those who struggle as it's common and it happens all the time, and just really focus on how we can help those people and making sure that we watch our language and be accepting.
Thank you. And I agree that's it's hard to not make those statements. You read the list and you're like, I've said that to somebody before. Oh, I feel like a jerk now. Shaka?
Well, and just to add to that, that happens, Chris. We know that happens. I do it. Just because I'm a person of color doesn't mean I don't microaggress against people and have to be like, ooh, shouldn't have said that. I apologize immediately, right? And I just think that us as leaders in this work, we have to be the role models for our kids and for the community. And, you know, definitely, Leah, that article that you were just talking about will be huge in helping those that don't know how to navigate that conversation, how to handle that. You know, one of the things I say is, ouch, you know, like, ooh, that didn't feel great, you know, and then it kind of like starts the conversation, you know, but we have to do what's comfortable for us, but we also have to be the leader and the ally that's doing that for those that are being harmed by the language. So that's all
I did put in the chat the link for the AFSP Out of Darkness Walk, which is in Schenectady on October 1st. It's a really amazing event. If you've never attended one, anyone who's been affected by suicide, and that is everyone, is there. And there's groups that walk in memory of specific people that they've lost. There's people who just join because they want to support those who have lost people to suicide. So that's out there. And I know I'm trying to I have them all printed. I just need to be in the building to put up some flyers around Farnsworth about it. It's an all ages event in the park in Schenectady. Seema.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. I hate limiting this discussion because I know it's so good and we'd probably be here all night. So thanks everyone for contributing. We just have one more item on the agenda for tonight, and that is the steering committee member vote. And I will ask Dr. Wiles, I think you're still there, right, Dr. Wiles, to help?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. We'll just give the nominated individuals a couple of, like a minute to say why they would like to be on the steering committee, why they would like to join another committee and come to another meeting. It's super short meeting, but I'll let you lead from here, Dr. Wiles.
Thanks so much, Seema. So as you know, Mrs. Sims sent out nomination forms to everyone on the committee. And then early this week, she reached out to everyone who was nominated to say, do you want the honor and privilege of being on yet another meeting each month to help plan our agenda for this meeting? So we actually have 3 students who were nominated and accepted, and we have 6 adults who were nominated and who said, yes, I'll do this. So we're going to use the end of our meeting here to give each of those individuals about a minute to say why it is they want to serve on that committee. And then at 8:30, so we'll be done with the meeting, you will get a Google form in your email so you can do your voting. We're going to vote offline this year. And then either Derek or I will reach out to everybody tomorrow to let you know how the vote went. So any questions before I turn it over to the first nominee. We're going to start with students. All right, Noah Kaufman, you're first.
Hi, should I turn my camera on?
We would love to have your camera.
All right. Sorry, I look a little gross. I just came back from a volleyball game.
That's all right.
All right. I'm interested in joining the steering committee because I feel like I'm very involved with the school. All schools, in fact. My mom and my dad are very involved with the GES PTA, and so I know a lot that's going on there. I have a bunch of younger siblings, and they're always sifting through the schools. So I'm very involved with the school. I do a lot through the school. I do the musical. I do sports. I'm in a bunch of different collections of people, so I'm very aware of what's going on in the school. So I feel like it's good as a student representative to have somebody who is aware of everything that's going on around the building. And I'm also up to date with current events when it comes to these, DEI issues. So it's not just the school, but also things that are going around just, in general. So, yeah.
Thank you, Noah. That was excellent. Kylie, you are next.
I would like to be a part of this committee because, as Noah said, I'm also very involved with school activities. Most things that happen, I try to be involved as much as I can. And I would really like to just be a part of a new committee and just dip my toes in the water on something new and basically just kind of try out more things. And that's basically.
Thank you, Kylie. That was awesome. So the third student who was nominated was Varshini, and she sent me her statement, and so I'm going to play her role at this moment. And she writes, "I accept this nomination, ! I won't be at the meeting because I have a class, so here is why I'd like to be in this leadership role. I would love to take on this role because I can bring in issues and ideas I hear from students in both ASU and Feminist Club and add them to the agenda. ASU is also helping to collaborate with BSU, so I'll be hearing things from members of BSU as well. By taking on this leadership role, I hope I can bring as many topics as possible from a large number of student perspectives. Being a part of the steering committee would give me and other students the opportunity to directly affect what is discussed at DEI meetings and hopefully allow me to come up with new ideas and add them to the list of things DEI can discuss." So that was Varshini. All right, so we also have 6 adults, and when you vote at 8:30 or by noon tomorrow, that's your deadline, you're going to be voting for 2. And first up is Shaka.
All right then. I would like to be on the steering committee because this has been definitely something that I've undertaken going on 20 years ago now as something that I eat, sleep, and breathe: diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. I have an 8-year-old that's in the Guilderland School District, and I have a vested interest in seeing her through this school district, and just being a member of this fabulous community in Guilderland. I have a vested interest in seeing all the children do well in this community. And DEI issues don't just affect, my daughter, they affect the entire community and the various ways through life that our children present. And I've been on a steering committee in government before for DEIA, and I feel like I would just enjoy to do that, in the education setting and learn more about the education setting and how to also continue to support children, because that's what I do in my work, and I want to do it in this arena too. So I look forward to a nomination. But thank you.
Thank you, Shaka. That was great. Tamika, you're next.
Sorry, muted myself. So I, right there with Shaka, I believe, I feel that I would be a great candidate for the steering committee because so far my life's work has been ensuring equitable outcomes for all individuals in New York State that do face disproportionate disparities in all socioeconomic areas, from their healthcare to their economic status, housing, and educational services. My education as an MPH student is also centered around public health, but most importantly, I've had the privilege of raising three amazing children in this school district for the past 20 years, one of which graduated out of Guilderland in 2021. And I have two left, one in elementary and one in middle school. So my interest in ensuring diversity, equity, and inclusion in the school district is to ensure that they and all children in our town have an exceptional educational experience. So thank you for the opportunity. And I look forward to seeing the vote.
Thank you so much, Tamika. Emma, you're next.
Hi, I'm Emma. As a member, I wrote something out. So if I'm looking at my phone, I just want to make sure that I drafted it a little bit. As a member of my elementary school's DEI committee and a member of our district committee, I am very dedicated to the work we are doing here at Guilderland. Part of the reason I am so invested in this work is because growing up, I struggled to feel accepted in my school community. I am Jewish and grew up in a community that did not have many other Jewish students. I was made to feel different from my classmates, and I always felt ashamed of who I was and what I believed in. I do not want anyone to feel the way that I did. Through being a part of the steering committee, I feel confident that I can support our students and school community. I would love to have an opportunity to be a leader in this work alongside students and other committee members, and am committed to being sure that each and every person in our school community feels seen, safe, and welcomed. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Emma. Chris Jaeger, you're next.
Hi, hope you're not tired of hearing my voice. So I've been on the leadership committee this past year, and I've really valued being able to voice a lot for the middle school. I think sometimes we get lost in the middle because that's our name. I want to contribute in this way for the same reasons that I wanted to be a middle school counselor, because I think that middle school is really hard. And when you're already at the intersections of your own development, and then you have intersectioning identities, then you need people to advocate for yourselves. And that's what I do. I advocate for students. It's a role that I'm really proud of, and it's a role that I take very seriously. I try to keep my eyes on all of those identities, because sometimes we focus very specifically on race, or we focus on sexuality and gender, or socioeconomic status, and we forget things like mental health, or we forget things like literacy, or age, or disability. And I think it's important to keep all of those pieces up in the air and part of the focus.
Thank you, Chris. Beth, you're next.
All right. I wrote something as well, so I'm just going to read it. Over the past 20 years, I've dedicated myself to advocating for diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, as well as creating environments where all individuals feel accepted, supported, celebrated, and valued. This has been a primary focus of my job currently as an education director for a civil rights organization, and was a major focus while I served as a classroom teacher for 10 years prior to that. I've done my best to distinguish myself as an advocate for marginalized people and a supportive resource for those looking to improve school climates and advocate for positive change. I excel at creating environments which are both supportive and accountable. Currently, I'm the co-chair of People with Disabilities Employee Resource Group at my place of employment. And over the years, I've served on several task forces related to improving culture for the BIPOC and LGBTQ+ communities. As a mother of two young children in the Guilderland School District, I feel that it's vitally important to be a part of the change that I wish to see. I want all children in Guilderland to feel safe, celebrated, and included every day, and I would be happy to serve on the steering committee to help drive this change in the district.
Thank you so much, Beth. So we have one more. It's Nina Kaplan, who is at 8th grade open house right now. So I am now channeling Nina Kaplan, who sent me something in writing, and I'm just going to go ahead and read it. After having served on the Guilderland School District's DEI committee for the past year, I can't say enough how grateful I've been to work with such incredible and brilliant colleagues, parents, educators, and other stakeholders. I would be remiss to not say just how much I have learned from our fearless former leader, Matt Pinchinat. Without a doubt, his inspirational hard work and dedication to promoting DEI in GCSD has surely left a legacy for years to come. To say that it's been an incredible opportunity to be part of such a significant and crucial entity is an understatement. As a parent of a GHS junior and FMS middle schooler, I'm a primary stakeholder in the efforts to teach our youth how relevant DEI principles are in today's world. Now more than ever, with the unfortunate trend in many states and school districts turning away from adhering to open DEI curricula, we are doing such noble and impressive work. In terms of my professional life, I've been teaching social studies in the South Colony School District for 21 years and a member of the DEI committee in my building. I'm also a union building representative and a member of the Character Education Committee. I'm also the chair of the committee for the Early Childhood Education Center with Ohav Shalom. If selected to be a member of the steering committee, I will continue to strive to listen and learn from the brilliant and inspirational colleagues and members of this uplifting and essential team of leaders. I can only hope that our work will make a lasting impact on our students and community, and that this very important work will continue to develop and flourish for many years to come. Again, let me reiterate how honored I am and feel that every single one of you is an incredible asset and benefit to our students and community. Thank you, Nina Kaplan. All right, so those are all of the nominees. So in a minute, you're going to have a voting ballot in your inbox, and Deb wrote beautifully clear directions, so you'll know exactly what to do when you open it up. We're going to have noon tomorrow be the deadline, so that even folks who weren't able to be here with us tonight will have a chance to vote. And then I'll get together with Derek and we'll reach out tomorrow afternoon and let everybody know. Sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Wiles. Before we close, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you to everybody who wanted to join the steering committee. And I hate having to vote because I feel like there's so many great contributors to this group. And regardless of who was on the steering committee, I hope everybody stays super involved. I just love to see that there's like new faces who've joined the committee and to me as well. So I'm super excited to work with all of you going forward. It's been a real trajectory of where we started from. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Derek and Shaka. I will close out this meeting. Does anyone have any last minute additions? Oh, we'll have a moment. We'll have a motion to adjourn. Chris, second Shaka. Thanks everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.